That evening, as Miguel tucked Ethan into bed, Apollo settled into his designated spot beside the boy's bed, alert and watchful even in the dimly lit room. "Dad, that lady doesn't like Apollo, does she?" Ethan's voice was small, his fingers absently stroking the dog's soft fur. Miguel paused, choosing his words carefully. "Some people just need time to understand how special service dogs are. Apollo isn't just any dog, he's your medical equipment and your friend." "Medical equipment doesn't have a heartbeat," Ethan said with unexpected wisdom. "That's what makes Apollo better than my other stuff. He lets me back." After Ethan fell asleep, Miguel found Elena in the kitchen, poring over the HOA binder with a highlighter and sticky notes. "This is unbelievable," she whispered, gesturing to a page marked with a red tab. "Listen to this. No animals weighing more than 20 pounds permitted without special exemption, granted solely at the discretion of the board president. And here, service animals must apply for special variants and may be subject to additional fees and restrictions." Miguel ran his hand through his hair, the familiar tension creeping up his neck. "That's illegal. The ADA specifically prohibits that kind of discrimination." "I know," Elena replied, closing the binder. "I've already called the advocacy group that helped us get Apollo. They're sending information about how to formally document everything." The following morning brought their first interaction with other neighbors. Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher who lived 2 doors down, appeared with a homemade casserole and a warm smile that faltered when she spotted Apollo. "Oh," she said, her eyes darting nervously to the street. "He's beautiful, but is Patricia aware you have him?" "She is," Elena confirmed, accepting the casserole. "He's Ethan's service dog. Is there a problem?" Mrs. Chen lowered her voice. No, it's just Patricia has been president for 12 years. No one crosses her. Last summer, the Johnsons had to remove a tree from their backyard because its shadow fell on her garden for 2 hours each afternoon. She claimed it violated her right to unobstructed sunlight. "That's ridiculous," Miguel said, incredulous. "Perhaps," Mrs. Chen agreed, "but they paid $2,700 for the removal after she threatened legal action. That's how things work here." She glanced at Apollo again. "The Rodriguezes on Maple Court have a chocolate lab. They keep him indoors when Patricia walks by." Just a friendly suggestion. After she left, Elena and Miguel exchanged worried looks. "Maybe we made a mistake," Elena said softly. "We can't keep Apollo hidden. That defeats the whole purpose." "We're not hiding him," Miguel replied firmly. "This house was perfect in every other way. The one-level floor plan for Ethan's safety, the fenced yard, the proximity to his new neurologist. We're not letting some power-hungry HOA president drive us away." The conversation was interrupted by the mechanical whir of Patricia's golf cart, apparently her preferred method of neighborhood patrol. She rolled to a stop in front of their house, clipboard in hand, scrutinizing their property with narrowed eyes. Apollo, sitting beside Ethan on the front step, perked up his ears but remained perfectly still, as his training dictated. Patricia made a show of writing something down, then called out with artificial sweetness, "Your mailbox is 2 inches taller than regulation. You'll need to submit Form 37B for a height variance by Thursday." She accelerated away before they could respond. "Is she always watching us?" Ethan asked uneasily. Miguel placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "It certainly seems that way. But remember what we talked about when we moved here. This is our home now. We belong here just as much as anyone else." What Miguel didn't say was how familiar this feeling was: the hypervigilance, the constant assessment of threats, the strategic planning for every movement. It reminded him of his deployment, a comparison that disturbed him deeply. He had moved his family to this peaceful suburb to escape exactly these kinds of feelings. Miguel's hands trembled slightly as he lowered the latest violation notice, his jaw tight with restraint. Elena recognized the signs: the 1,000-yard stare, the controlled breathing. His PTSD therapist had warned them about trigger situations: feeling trapped, being watched, perceiving threats to family safety. Patricia was unknowingly pushing every button. "That's the 3rd notice this week," Elena said quietly, adding it to the bulging file. "And it's only Wednesday." Miguel nodded toward the window, where Ethan sat on the porch steps with Apollo, reading aloud from his science textbook, a technique his therapist suggested to help with both his reading comprehension and anxiety. He asked me yesterday if we were going to have to move again. Said he overheard Patricia telling someone we were problem residents. Elena's phone buzzed with an email notification, another message from the ADA advocacy group. Our lawyer says we should install more cameras. Patricia's actions are starting to constitute harassment under housing discrimination laws. The advocacy group had been a lifeline, connecting them with other families who'd faced similar situations. What shocked Elena was how common their story was: service animal discrimination, hidden beneath the veneer of community standards and property values. That afternoon, Elena spotted Patricia leading an appraiser through the neighborhood, pointing out homes and making dramatic gestures toward the Martinez property. Through her kitchen window, Elena overheard fragments: property devaluation and unstable elements. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us, Elena told Miguel that evening, making it seem like we're bringing down property values. Then we need allies, Miguel decided. He'd learned in the military that isolation made you vulnerable. Time to meet our neighbors properly. They organized a small weekend barbecue, inviting the houses directly surrounding theirs. To their relief, 7 families accepted, some seemingly out of curiosity, others with genuine warmth. Mrs. Chen arrived first with homemade lemonade and a warning. Patricia's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Something about community safety protocols. She's been showing people photos. The gathering was going well. Ethan introducing Apollo to fascinated neighborhood children, Miguel grilling burgers, Elena learning names and stories, until Patricia's golf cart hummed to a stop at the curb. She remained seated, taking pictures with her phone, making no attempt to hide her surveillance. Mr. Abernathy, a retired postal worker from across the street, watched with narrowed eyes. Has she been doing this a lot? Almost daily, Elena confirmed. That's not right, he said firmly. My grandson has autism. His service dog was the best thing that ever happened to him. Mind if I have a word with her? Before they could respond, he strode toward Patricia's cart. Their conversation was brief and tense, ending with Patricia's shrill declaration. This is a planned community, Frank. People pay a premium to live without disturbances. If you don't like the rules, there are plenty of unregulated neighborhoods elsewhere. She accelerated away, but not before calling out to the gathered neighbors. HOA meeting tomorrow, 7 p.m. sharp. Attendance is mandatory for all members in good standing. The barbecue dispersed shortly after, a cloud hanging over what had been a pleasant afternoon. That evening, as if on cue, 3 more violation notices appeared, one for unauthorized gathering exceeding permissible head count, another for use of charcoal barbecue without prior approval, and the third, most ominously, for animal creating neighborhood disturbance. But Apollo didn't make a sound. Ethan protested, his voice trembling. He was perfect all day. Everyone said so. We know, honey, Elena assured him. Mrs. Winters is just confused. After Ethan went to bed, Miguel and Elena sat at the kitchen table, mapping out their strategy. As if sensing their conversation, Apollo lifted his head slightly, eyes searching the room until they found Elena. Even through the pain and medication, his gaze held the same steadfast loyalty that had defined him from the beginning. You focus on healing, Elena whispered, pressing her palm against the glass. We'll handle the rest. Across town, Ethan was finally released from the hospital, his medication adjusted to help control the increased seizure activity. The neurologist had added a strict regimen of anti-anxiety medication after Ethan woke screaming from yet another nightmare of gunshots and blood. Where's Apollo? He asked as Miguel helped him into the car, his voice small and frightened in a way they hadn't heard since before the service dog came into their lives. Miguel and Elena had practiced this moment, carefully choosing their words. Apollo was hurt very badly, buddy. He's at the animal hospital getting the best care possible. But he's coming home, right? Ethan persisted. He's not. He didn't. He's alive, Miguel assured him. But the bullet damaged his shoulder. The doctors say he'll need a lot of time to heal, and even then, he might not be able to do all the things he used to do for you. Ethan absorbed this information with the peculiar gravity of children who have faced serious illness. You mean he can't be my service dog anymore? That's what the doctors think, Elena confirmed gently. But he'll always be your dog, Ethan, your friend. We just might need to find another service dog to help with your seizures. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, but his expression was resolute rather than defeated. Then I'll help Apollo now. He's always taken care of me. It's my turn to take care of him. The Martinez family's attorney, Sofia Rodriguez, arrived at the police station within hours of the incident, her expression grim as she reviewed the preliminary reports. A former prosecutor specializing in disability rights cases, she had taken on their case pro bono after hearing about it through the Service Dog organization. This is no longer just about HOA harassment, she explained to Miguel, who had reluctantly left Apollo's bedside at the clinic. We're looking at criminal charges, civil damages, and federal ADA violations. Patricia Winters has created a perfect storm of liability for herself. She pulled out a tablet, showing Miguel a cascade of social media responses. #Justice for Apollo was trending locally, with service dog handlers across the country sharing their own stories of discrimination and harassment. The court of public opinion has already ruled, Sofia said. But we need the actual courts to do their job. This may take months, even years. Miguel rubbed his bloodshot eyes. We don't have years. Apollo's medical bills are already at $17,000, and that's just for the emergency surgery. Ethan's seizures are back to multiple daily episodes without Apollo's alerts. Our insurance is fighting coverage for both. Sofia nodded grimly. That's why we're pursuing immediate injunctive relief and expedited damages. But there's something else you should know. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of police reports dating back 5 years. Complaints filed against Patricia by former Pine Grove Estates residents, each dismissed due to insufficient evidence or complainant withdrawal. She's done this before, Sofia explained. Targeted families with disabilities, minority homeowners, anyone she deemed undesirable. Most eventually sold their homes at a loss just to escape. The difference this time is you have evidence, witnesses, and a community finally willing to speak up. Outside the station, reporters had gathered, alerted by scanner traffic and social media. Miguel declined to comment, but as he walked to his car, he was surprised to find a group of Pine Grove residents waiting for him. Mr. Abernathy stepped forward as their spokesperson. We took up a collection, he said, pressing an envelope into Miguel's hand. It's not enough for all of Apollo's care, but it's a start. And we want you to know, we're testifying. All of us, every HOA meeting, every harassment incident, every illegal rule Patricia tried to enforce. It's time someone stood up to her. Miguel was too exhausted for words, but as he embraced the neighbors who had once seemed so distant, he felt a fragile hope beginning to form. Meanwhile, at the veterinary hospital, Apollo had survived his first surgery, but complications arose when the bullet fragments were found to have damaged nerves controlling his left front leg. The prognosis was guarded at best. Even with the best rehabilitation, he'll likely never regain full function. The veterinary surgeon explained to Elena as they watched Apollo through the ICU window, the once proud dog now connected to a tangle of tubes and monitors. And I have to be honest, his service dog career is over. He simply won't have the physical capability to perform the tasks required. Elena struggled to process this news, knowing what it would mean for Ethan. Service dogs like Apollo took years to train and cost tens of thousands of dollars. The wait lists stretched for months, sometimes years. But he'll live, she asked, her voice barely audible. We believe so, the surgeon confirmed. But his recovery will be long and difficult. We've documented everything, Elena said. The lawyer says we have a solid case for harassment, but pursuing legal action would be expensive and drawn out. Miguel nodded grimly. And Patricia knows that. She's counting on us giving up before it gets to that point. Their security system chimed, alerting them to motion in the front yard. On the monitor, they watched Patricia methodically measuring the distance between their mailbox and the curb with a tape measure. jotting notes by flashlight. "This is getting obsessive," Elena whispered. "It's always been obsessive," Miguel replied. "But now, it feels dangerous." Neither voiced their deeper fear. What if Patricia's fixation on Apollo went beyond rule enforcement? What if she decided to take matters into her own hands? The next morning, they awoke to find their trash cans overturned, garbage strewn across the driveway. Apollo bristled, hackles raised as he sniffed the perimeter, something he'd never done before. "It could have been raccoons," Elena suggested weakly. But Miguel pointed to the clean scissor cuts on the garbage bags, the methodical nature of the mess. "Raccoons don't carry scissors, Elena." As they cleaned up, a group text arrived from Mrs. Chen. "Emergency HOA meeting moved to tonight. Patricia showing security footage of dangerous animal incident. Don't know what she's referring to, but thought you should know." Miguel and Elena exchanged looks of dread. Patricia was escalating, and they had no idea what she might do next. That night, Elena created a dedicated email address specifically for HOA communications and sent their first formal notification about Apollo's protected status under federal law, attaching digital copies of his certification and Ethan's medical documentation. The response came at 11:47 p.m., a terse acknowledgement from Patricia that concluded with, "Registration noted, but not approved pending board review." As they drifted off to sleep, the sound of a camera shutter clicked outside their bedroom window. Miguel was up in an instant, pulling back the curtain just in time to see Patricia's silhouette retreating across their front lawn, her phone clutched in her hand. "Did she just take pictures of our house in the middle of the night?" Elena whispered, incredulous. "Not our house," Miguel corrected grimly. "Our bedroom. She's trying to intimidate us." What they didn't know then was how far Patricia Winters was willing to go to maintain her perfect neighborhood, and that her immaculate garden shed concealed more than just pruning shears and weed killer. Patricia's defense crumbled further when financial investigators uncovered a pattern of HOA fund misappropriation spanning almost a decade. What began as an animal cruelty case expanded into charges of embezzlement, falsification of records, and fraudulent misrepresentation. Former board members, finally free from Patricia's intimidation, came forward with evidence of forged signatures, fabricated meeting minutes, and questionable vendor contracts with kickback provisions. She created a personal fiefdom, the prosecutor explained during closing arguments, where rules apply to everyone but herself. Ms. Winters used fear, intimidation, and ultimately violence to maintain control, all while illegally profiting from her position. Outside the courthouse, a demonstration of service dog handlers had gathered daily throughout the trial, their animals sitting perfectly behaved with vests proclaiming "Service dogs save lives," and "I am medical equipment with a heartbeat." The case had become a rallying point for disability advocates nationwide, spurring legislative proposals in 3 states to strengthen protections for service animals and their handlers. For Ethan, the 9 months since the shooting had been a journey of both loss and unexpected growth. His seizures, once nearly controlled, had returned with debilitating frequency without Apollo's early warnings. Yet each day after school, he devoted hours to Apollo's rehabilitation exercises, gently stretching the dog's damaged leg, massaging atrophied muscles, and celebrating each small improvement. "Good boy," he would whisper as Apollo struggled to put weight on his injured leg. "You're the bravest dog in the world." Apollo might never run again or climb stairs with his former agility, but his cognitive abilities remained intact. He still sensed Ethan's seizures coming, even if he couldn't perform his trained responses. Instead, he developed his own system, barking in a specific pattern when he detected the neurological changes that preceded an episode. It wasn't as effective as his previous alerts, but it gave the family some warning, enough to get Ethan to safety if not to prevent the seizure entirely. At the Service Dog Training Center where Patricia now performed her community service hours, the irony was not lost on anyone. Twice weekly, she cleaned kennels, prepared meals, and performed administrative tasks, surrounded by the very animals she had once deemed unworthy of her neighborhood. The center's director, a no-nonsense woman named Marlene, made no special accommodations for Patricia's discomfort. "These dogs save lives every day," Marlene told her bluntly during orientation. Your job is to make their work possible. I don't care about your personal feelings toward animals. Your actions here will be judged solely on how well you serve their needs. It was in this facility that Patricia first encountered Luna, the black Labrador being specially trained for Ethan. Luna had been fast-tracked through the program after the Martinez case gained national attention, her training tailored specifically to Ethan's seizure patterns. She even underwent special socialization with Apollo, learning to work alongside the injured dog rather than replace him entirely. The day Luna came home with them, Apollo watched from his special orthopedic bed as the young lab explored her new environment. The family had worried about jealousy or territorial issues, but Apollo's reaction surprised them all. When Luna approached him hesitantly, tail wagging in submission, Apollo simply licked her muzzle once, a gesture of acceptance that brought tears to Elena's eyes. That night, the family celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, both dogs lying contentedly beneath the table. Miguel raised his glass in a toast. Elena reached for his hand, and to our community, the one we never knew we had until we needed them most. Ethan, who had grown 2 inches during the ordeal and whose face had lost some of its childhood softness, added his own toast to Apollo, the best teacher I ever had. After dinner, as Ethan prepared for bed with both dogs following close behind, Elena found Miguel standing at the window, looking out at their neighborhood. The 4SAAE sign had finally disappeared from Patricia's vacant house, purchased by a young family with twins who used cochlear implants. Across the street, Mr. Abernathy was installing a wheelchair ramp for his mother-in-law, who was moving in with them, a modification Patricia would have fought viciously in her reign. Do you regret buying this house? Elena asked softly, after everything that happened. Miguel considered the question, watching as neighbors walked their dogs, children played in front yards, and a sense of genuine community flourished where fear had once ruled. No, he said finally. This was always meant to be our home. Sometimes you have to fight for the place where you belong. Miguel's military training kicked in as he assessed the scene before him. His son convulsing on the grass, Apollo bleeding heavily from the chest wound, and Patricia still holding the gun with an expression that chilled him to the bone. Not panic or regret, but satisfaction. Drop the weapon, Miguel commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his former rank. Surprisingly, Patricia complied, the small pistol falling to the manicured lawn. Elena was already on her knees beside Ethan, turning him onto his side in the recovery position they'd practiced countless times, her phone pressed to her ear as she gave their address to emergency services. He needs Apollo, she cried, tears streaming down her face. The seizure. Apollo helps him through it. Miguel knelt beside the wounded dog, pressing his hands against the beating chest wound. Apollo's eyes were fixed on Ethan, struggling desperately to reach the boy despite his injury. Easy, boy, Miguel whispered, his own voice breaking. Stay with us. Neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the gunshot. Mrs. Chen ran toward them, a clean bedsheet in her arms. Use this, she instructed, helping Miguel create a pressure bandage. My husband is a veterinarian. He's calling the emergency clinic. They'll be ready. Mr. Abernathy appeared next, guiding his wife who carried a medical kit. I was an army medic, he explained, kneeling beside Ethan. May I help? The community that had seemed so divided now rallied around them. Someone directed traffic away from the street. Another neighbor, a trauma nurse, monitored Ethan's vitals while murmuring reassurances. A teenager sprinted from 3 houses down with an oxygen tank his grandmother used. Throughout it all, Patricia stood motionless, watching the scene unfold with an eerie detachment. When police sirens wailed in the distance, she finally spoke. He was trespassing, she repeated mechanically. The dog was aggressive. But even as the words left her mouth, a young man from the house behind Patricia's stepped forward, smartphone in hand. That's not what happened, he said firmly. I was setting up my new security camera when I heard the commotion. It caught everything. He played the footage for the arriving officers. Ethan's ball sailing over the fence, his cautious entry through the gate, his clear warning to Patricia that Apollo was his service dog, and most damning of all, Apollo's calm, non-aggressive demeanor as he followed his training to stay with Ethan. The police separated Patricia from the crowd, confiscating her weapon and leading her to a patrol car. As they guided her away, she maintained her rigid posture, calling out to the HOA members in the gathering crowd. "This is exactly what I warned would happen. Animals don't belong in Pine Grove Estates. The property values." An officer gently but firmly guided her into the back seat, cutting off her protests. Meanwhile, the Martinez family faced their own emergency. The paramedics arrived simultaneously with animal control, creating momentary confusion until Mr. Abernathy intervened. "This is a registered service animal actively assisting a child with a medical condition," he explained with the confidence of someone familiar with the regulations. "Your priority is to transport both of them together to medical facilities." The lead paramedic nodded, making a quick call to confirm the protocol for service animals. "We'll take them both. The boy to Memorial, the dog to the emergency vet clinic next door." As they loaded Ethan onto the stretcher, his seizure finally subsiding, his first whispered word was Apollo. Elena climbed into the ambulance with her son while Miguel followed in their car with Apollo, Mrs. Chen accompanying him to help keep pressure on the wound. The blood soaked through the makeshift bandage at an alarming rate, Apollo's breathing growing increasingly labored. "Stay with me," Miguel pleaded, one hand on the steering wheel, the other gently stroking the dog's head. "Ethan needs you. We all need you." At the emergency veterinary clinic, a team was waiting at the entrance. They whisked Apollo away on a gurney, a flurry of activity as they assessed his vital signs and prepared for emergency surgery. "The bullet appears to have entered here," the lead veterinarian explained, pointing to a diagram. "It's lodged near his scapula. We need to operate immediately." "Do whatever it takes," Miguel said without hesitation. "Cost isn't an issue." As the surgical team rushed Apollo into the operating room, Miguel sank into a waiting room chair, his hands still covered in the loyal dog's blood. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Ethan's stable, but asking for Apollo. What do I tell him?" Miguel stared at the message, tears blurring his vision. How could he explain to his son that the dog who had given him freedom, confidence, and safety might not survive the night?